The massive chamber stretched for kilometers in every direction. Floating platforms held representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking trees, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. This was the Galactic Confederation Council, the most important governing body in the known universe. Ambassador Sarah sat quietly on the human platform. She was a small woman with dark hair and calm eyes. Around her, the aliens spoke in their various languages, but her translator device helped her understand every word. What she heard did not make her happy. "The humans are too primitive," buzzed Counselor, a being that looked like a cross between a mantis and a spider. "They solve their problems with violence instead of proper negotiation." A creature made of flowing metal nodded in agreement. "Our observers have watched their planet for 50 years. These humans fight wars that last only months or years. How can they understand galactic politics that require centuries of careful planning?" Sarah had heard this same argument for 3 hours now. The Galactic Confederation had invited humanity to apply for membership, but now they seemed to regret it. Every species in the chamber had something negative to say about human nature. "Perhaps we should test them," said a voice from across the chamber. The speaker was Ambassador of the Empire. He was tall and reptilian, with scales that changed color when he spoke. They were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive conquerors, though they followed the ancient rules of galactic warfare. The chamber fell silent. When they spoke, everyone listened. They controlled more star systems than any other single empire. "What kind of test do you suggest?" asked the council chairman, a being so old that nobody remembered what species he originally came from. Scales shifted to a deep red color. "The humans have established colonies on 17 worlds beyond their home system. We could claim 3 of these worlds as territory. If the humans can navigate the proper diplomatic channels to resolve this dispute, they will prove themselves worthy of membership." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. This was standard procedure for testing new species. The established empires would make territorial claims, and the newcomers would have to prove they understood galactic law by following the correct negotiation process. The process was complex and could take decades. First, there would be symbolic battles where both sides would show their strength without causing real damage. Then prisoner exchanges would begin, where each side would capture important figures from the other and trade them back during negotiations. Cultural experts and mediators would become involved. Trade agreements would be proposed and rejected dozens of times. Eventually, after years of careful diplomacy, both sides would reach a compromise that usually gave the newcomers about half of what they originally wanted. "This is acceptable," declared the chairman. "Ambassador, you may proceed with claiming 3 human colonial worlds. Ambassador, your species will have the opportunity to prove their understanding of proper galactic procedure." Sarah stood up slowly. The chamber was so large that her platform had to move closer to the center so everyone could see her properly. As she approached, the other platforms arranged themselves in a circle around her. "Thank you, Council Chairman," Sarah said in a clear voice. "I appreciate this opportunity for my people to demonstrate our capabilities." Scales shifted to orange, which Sarah's translator indicated meant amusement. "I have chosen the colonies of New Geneva, Port, and Srest. These worlds now belong to the Empire under the ancient laws of territorial acquisition. You have been according to proper procedure." The reptilian ambassador smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We look forward to beginning negotiations. I estimate this process will take approximately 15 to 20 years, which is quite reasonable for a dispute of this scope." Sarah nodded politely. "I understand your position, Ambassador. Thank you for following proper procedure in making your claim." The aliens in the chamber relaxed slightly. Perhaps these humans did understand galactic civilization after all. The woman seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation without becoming emotional or demanding immediate action. "However," Sarah continued, I must inform you that you have 72 hours to withdraw your claims and remove any presence from human space. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the ambient noise from the life support system seemed to stop. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other organs focused on the small human woman. Scales shifted through several colors rapidly before settling on deep purple, which indicated confusion. I'm sorry, Ambassador, but I don't understand your response. This is a formal territorial claim under galactic law. The proper response is to begin preliminary negotiations for prisoner exchange protocols. Sarah checked her watch, a simple device that looked primitive compared to the advanced technology surrounding her. 71 hours and 58 minutes remaining. This is highly irregular, buzzed Counselor. The humans clearly don't understand proper procedure. Perhaps we should provide them with cultural advisors to explain how territorial disputes are resolved in civilized space. That won't be necessary, Sarah replied. Our position is quite simple. You have claimed sovereign human territory without justification. You will withdraw, or we will make you withdraw. You have 71 hours and 56 minutes to decide. The chairman's ancient voice carried a tone of concern. Ambassador, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. This is not an actual territorial conflict. This is a diplomatic exercise designed to test your species' ability to engage in proper galactic procedure. No one expects this dispute to be resolved quickly. Sarah smiled politely. With respect, Council Chairman, there is no misunderstanding. The Empire has made a territorial claim against human space. We have responded appropriately. Scales had turned completely black, indicating anger. You cannot simply demand immediate withdrawal. This is not how galactic politics work. There are procedures, protocols, centuries of established practice. Our procedure is simpler, Sarah said calmly. 71 hours and 54 minutes. The chamber erupted in confused discussions. Representatives spoke rapidly in dozens of languages, trying to understand what the human was actually saying. Some species began calculating whether the humans were threatening immediate war, which would be unprecedented for such a minor territorial dispute. Perhaps, suggested a delegate from the Trade Federation, the humans need time to consult with their leadership. This response seems uncharacteristic of a species seeking peaceful membership in our confederation. Sarah shook her head. No consultation is necessary. I speak with full authority of the human colonial government. Our position is final. She paused and checked her watch again. 71 hours and 52 minutes. As her platform moved away from the center of the chamber, Sarah could hear the frantic discussions beginning behind her. The aliens were trying to understand what kind of species would treat a routine diplomatic test as grounds for immediate war. They would find out soon enough. Fleet Admiral L stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green world of New Geneva rotate slowly below. The human colony looked peaceful and prosperous, with cities that sparkled in the sunlight and orbital stations that handled trade between the planets. L had conducted territorial acquisitions 43 times in his career. The process was always the same. His fleet would arrive, establish diplomatic camps on the surface, and begin the careful dance of negotiation that would eventually lead to a satisfactory compromise for all parties involved. Status report, he ordered his communications officer. All 3 worlds are now under our control, Admiral. We have established diplomatic camps on New Geneva, Port, and Rest. Local human authorities have been of our presence according to standard protocol. Excellent. How many prisoners have we taken for the exchange process? 200 humans from each world, sir. All are important local officials or business leaders, as required by galactic law. They are being held in comfortable facilities and treated according to the prisoner protocols. L nodded with satisfaction. 600 prisoners was a good number for starting negotiations. Not too many to seem aggressive, but enough to demonstrate serious intent. And the human response? Very strange, sir. They acknowledged our messages but refused to begin prisoner exchange negotiations. They keep repeating the same message about 72 hours. The Admiral's tail twitched with annoyance. These humans clearly don't understand proper procedure. No matter. Once their negotiation team arrives, we can begin educating them about galactic customs. What I didn't know was that human ships were already moving. In star systems throughout human space, military vessels were receiving urgent deployment orders. But these orders confused every alien intelligence service monitoring human communications. Captain received her orders while her destroyer was patrolling the outer rim of the Sol system. She read the message 3 times before calling her senior staff to the bridge. Ladies and we have new orders. All available ships are to form up for immediate deployment to the new Geneva system. Her tactical officer looked puzzled. Ma'am, that's where they are conducting their territorial acquisition. Are we supposed to join the negotiation escort? Shook her head. Negative, we're going in with full battle, and according to these orders, we're not the only ones. Across human space, similar conversations were taking place. The Third Fleet was ordered to abandon its patrol of the trade routes. The Fifth Fleet was recalled from training exercises. Most shocking of all, the First Fleet was ordered to leave Earth's defenses and join the deployment. Alien observers watching human space were baffled. No species ever moved their entire military for a simple territorial dispute. Leaving your undefended during negotiations was considered either suicide or insanity. This doesn't make sense, reported surveillance operative to his superiors at Galactic Intelligence. The humans are mobilizing everything, not just their frontier forces, but their entire military structure. His supervisor, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, pulsed with confusion. Are you certain? Perhaps they're conducting military exercises. Negative, sir. They're loading their ships with live ammunition, not practice rounds. And they're bringing their industrial ships too. Construction vessels, mining platforms, even hospital ships. It's like they're preparing to move their entire civilization. The supervisor's tentacles writhed nervously. This is unprecedented. Contact the fleet immediately. They need to know what they're dealing with. Back on New Geneva, Admiral L received the intelligence report with growing confusion. His scales shifted from their normal green to yellow, indicating puzzlement. They're bringing their entire fleet for a simple territorial acquisition. He turned to his chief advisor, an elderly with scales who had been present at dozens of such operations. I've never seen anything like it, Admiral. Either the humans don't understand the scope of this operation, or they're planning something completely outside normal procedure. L studied the tactical display showing human ship movements. Red dots were converging from every direction toward the 3 disputed systems. The numbers were staggering. How many ships are they bringing? Our best estimate is everything they have, sir. Every military vessel, every support ship, even their deep space exploration craft. They're also bringing what appears to be their entire command structure. That's impossible. No species commits everything to a territorial negotiation. What about their other borders, their trade protection, their homeland defense? Apparently abandoned, sir. They've left skeleton crews at best. Admiral L had been in the military for over 200 years. He had fought in 3 major wars and countless minor skirmishes. He had never encountered a species that would risk everything for such a minor dispute. Perhaps, suggested his advisor, this is some sort of cultural demonstration. Some species have unusual ways of showing respect or strength during negotiations. Or, added his intelligence officer, they could be bluffing, making a show of force to improve their negotiating position. L considered both possibilities. Continue monitoring their movements and send a message to their leadership. Remind them that this is a standard territorial acquisition under galactic law. There's no need for such an extreme response. The message was transmitted to human space and received by Admiral, Sarah's sister, and commander of the human colonial fleet. She read the message while standing in the combat information center of her flagship. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "they are asking about our extreme response to their territorial acquisition. They want to schedule preliminary negotiations." Had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Not specifically for fighting, though, but for the day when humanity would have to prove itself in galactic space. She had studied every alien military doctrine, every example of interstellar warfare, every case study of territorial disputes. What she had learned was simple. Every other species in the galaxy fought until they could negotiate from a position of strength. They viewed war as an extension of diplomacy, a way to improve their bargaining position before sitting down at the negotiation table. Humans had a different philosophy. "Send a reply," ordered. "Tell them that negotiation concluded 72 hours ago. Everything that happens now is simply execution of policy." Her staff exchanged glances. They had been trained for years on human military doctrine, but seeing it applied against alien forces was still sobering. "Ma'am," her tactical officer asked quietly, "are we really going to treat this like a total war scenario?" Check the countdown timer on her command display. They took human civilians prisoner and claimed sovereign human territory. That constitutes an act of war against the human colonial government. She paused, watching the red dots on her display as human ships continued converging on positions. "Our response will be proportional to the threat they represent to human civilization." Her weapons officer looked confused. "But ma'am, this is just a territorial dispute. Standard galactic procedure calls for." "Lieutenant," interrupted, "there is no such thing as just a territorial dispute when human lives and human worlds are involved. They wanted to test our resolve. They're about to get their answer." As the last human ships jumped to hyperspace, realized that the galaxy was about to learn something important about human nature. Other species fought to win negotiations. Humans fought to end threats. The difference was about to become very clear. The human fleet arrived at New Geneva without fanfare, without demands, and without the traditional challenges that marked the beginning of galactic warfare. They simply dropped out of hyperspace and began targeting enemy ships. Admiral L was drinking his morning stimulant when his sensor officer began screaming. "Admiral, multiple hyperspace exits detected. Large fleet incoming." L rushed to the bridge, expecting to see the small human diplomatic escort that usually accompanied negotiation attempts. Instead, his tactical display showed more red dots than he had ever seen in one place. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Still counting, sir. At least 3,000 vessels of various sizes. They're surrounding the entire system." 3,000 ships. L's own fleet consisted of 200 vessels, which was considered massive for a territorial acquisition. No species brought 3,000 ships to a negotiation. "Are they broadcasting any demands, any diplomatic challenges?" "Negative, sir. They're not communicating at all. They're just targeting our ships." This was wrong, completely wrong. Galactic warfare followed strict protocols. First, both sides would exchange formal challenges. Then there would be preliminary skirmishes between small groups of ships while the main fleets maneuvered for position. After several days of testing each other's strength, the real negotiations would begin. "Open a channel to the human fleet," L ordered. "Remind them of proper procedure." The communication was sent and received by Admiral aboard her flagship. She listened to L's message without expression. "Fleet, this is Admiral of the human colonial fleet. You are in violation of human territorial sovereignty. You have taken human civilians prisoner. You have claimed human worlds as your own. These actions constitute acts of war against humanity." L's reply came quickly. "Admiral, this is Fleet Admiral L. We are conducting a standard territorial acquisition under galactic law. This is not a war. This is a diplomatic procedure designed to test your species' understanding of proper negotiation protocols." checked her tactical display. Every human ship was in position. Every weapons system was charged and ready. Every captain knew exactly what was expected of them. Admiral, you misunderstood our previous communication. When we told you to withdraw from human space, that was not the beginning of negotiations. That was the end of them. But Admiral, you cannot simply begin combat operations without following proper. The transmission ended abruptly as the human fleet opened fire. What happened next became the subject of military analysis for decades afterward. The humans didn't fight like any species the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't probe for weaknesses or test enemy responses. They didn't attempt to capture key positions for negotiating leverage. They simply attacked everything simultaneously with overwhelming force. The fleet was designed for the traditional style of galactic warfare. Their ships carried powerful shields and weapons, but they were built for extended engagements where both sides would gradually wear each other down while maneuvering for advantage. The human ships were different. They were built around a simple philosophy: apply maximum firepower to eliminate threats as quickly as possible. Every weapon was designed to penetrate enemy defenses. Every tactic was focused on destroying rather than disabling enemy vessels. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted over the sound of impact alarms, "they're targeting our entire fleet simultaneously. No selective engagement, no attempt to capture vessels for prisoner exchange." Admiral L watched in horror as his tactical display filled with red damage indicators. Human ships were concentrating fire on individual vessels until they were completely destroyed, then moving to the next target. There was no attempt to disable ships for later negotiation, no effort to preserve enemy crews for prisoner exchanges. "Are they trying to kill everyone?" he asked in shock. His tactical officer was monitoring the human attack patterns. "Sir, they appear to be targeting all life support systems, command centers, and weapons simultaneously. They're not trying to disable our ships. They're trying to annihilate them." This was beyond anything in L's experience. In his 43 previous territorial acquisitions, enemy forces had always tried to capture ships and crew members for use in later negotiations. The goal was never complete destruction. The goal was always to improve your position at the negotiation table. The humans didn't seem interested in negotiation tables. "Send an emergency transmission to the Confederation Council," L ordered as another section of his fleet disappeared from the tactical display. "Tell them the humans are conducting total warfare against a standard territorial acquisition." The transmission reached galactic intelligence within minutes, and chaos erupted across known space. Emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds. Military advisors who had been observing the situation with mild interest suddenly began updating their threat assessments of human military capability. "This is unprecedented," reported Intelligence Director to the emergency session of the Confederation Security Council. "The humans are treating a minor territorial dispute as if it were a species-ending conflict." The council chairman's ancient voice carried notes of concern. "Are you certain this isn't simply their version of normal negotiation tactics?" "Sir, they've destroyed 60% of the fleet in 4 hours. They're not taking prisoners. They're not attempting to capture territory for bargaining purposes. They appear to be trying to eliminate the presence entirely." Similar conversations were taking place throughout the galaxy. Species that had been planning their own tests of human diplomatic readiness suddenly found more urgent matters to attend to. The Trade Consortium, which had been preparing territorial demands of their own, immediately sent messages to human space offering exclusive trading agreements. The Defense League called an emergency session to discuss whether the humans represented a threat to galactic stability. The conclusion was unanimous. Any species that treated minor territorial disputes as total war scenarios was too dangerous to provoke. Back in the new Geneva system, Admiral L was facing the complete destruction of his fleet. His flagship was one of only 30 vessels still functional, and human ships were closing in from all directions. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "incoming transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." Admiral's voice was calm and professional. "Admiral L, you now have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Any personnel who wish to survive this engagement should abandon their ships immediately. You have 10 minutes to comply." L's scales shifted through several colors before settling on pale green, indicating defeat. "Admiral, surely we can discuss terms. Some sort of negotiated settlement." "Admiral L, your people fired on human ships and took human civilians prisoner. There are no terms to discuss. You have 9 minutes." The communication ended, leaving L staring at his tactical display. In 6 hours, his massive fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors. The humans hadn't suffered a single ship loss. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "recommend we comply with human demands. Our people deserve a chance to live." Al nodded slowly. "Signal all remaining ships to abandon immediately. Transmit unconditional surrender to the human fleet." As escape pods began launching from the dying fleet, observers throughout the galaxy reached the same terrifying conclusion. Humans didn't view territorial disputes as the opening move in a diplomatic process. They viewed them as problems to be solved permanently. The galaxy would never make that mistake again. In the aftermath, as human ships moved to secure the 3 colonial worlds, Admiral sent a simple message to Galactic Confederation headquarters. "Human territorial integrity has been restored. Thank you for your patience during this brief interruption of normal diplomatic procedures." The message was received in stunned silence. The humans were treating the complete annihilation of a major fleet as a brief interruption of diplomacy. The galaxy was beginning to understand what they were dealing with. Emperor of the Empire had ruled for over 3 centuries. In that time, he had conquered 12 species, absorbed 40 star systems, and established his people as one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. He had never experienced defeat. The news from New Geneva changed that. "The entire fleet?" he asked, his massive form hunched over the holographic display in his war room. Admiral L's entire fleet was destroyed. His military advisor, General Orr, nodded grimly. "Yes, Emperor, 200 ships and 40,000 personnel. The humans took no prisoners, they offered no terms, they simply eliminated everything." Emperor's scales darkened to deep purple, indicating rage that threatened to consume his legendary self-control. In 300 years of expansion, no species has ever dared to completely annihilate a fleet during a territorial acquisition. This is beyond insult. This is a direct challenge to our very existence. The Emperor studied the tactical reports from the battle. The human response had been unprecedented in its thoroughness and terrifying in its efficiency. No species fought like this. No civilization applied such overwhelming force to such minor territorial disputes. "What is the status of our military?" he demanded. General Orr activated a galaxy-wide display showing military positions. "We have 800 active vessels across our territory, plus defense platforms around our major worlds. Our full military strength hasn't been assembled in over a century." "Assemble it now," the Emperor commanded. "All fleets, all reserve vessels, all system defense forces. I want everything we have moving toward human space." The general's scales shifted to yellow with concern. "Emperor, that would leave our territory completely undefended. Such action is only taken during species-ending conflicts." "General, the humans have made this a species-ending conflict. They have demonstrated that they view territorial acquisitions not as diplomatic opportunities but as acts of war. If that is how they wish to conduct galactic relations, then we shall accommodate them." The Emperor's declaration sent shockwaves through the Empire. For the first time in their history, they were mobilizing their entire military force against a single target. The logistics alone were staggering. Supply lines had to be established across hundreds of light years. Defense platforms were abandoned. Colony worlds were left with minimal protection. Within the galactic intelligence community, panic began to spread. Emergency diplomatic missions launched from dozens of worlds, all heading toward human space with the same desperate message. Ambassador OK of the Federation arrived at Earth first. She was a tall, graceful being with crystalline skin that reflected her emotions through color changes. Currently, those colors indicated extreme anxiety. "Ambassador," she said as soon as her ship reached Earth orbit, "my government is prepared to offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Confederation, including permanent seats on all major councils. We will also provide territorial guarantees for all current human colonies and significant reparations for the aggression." Sarah received the ambassador in the same calm manner she had displayed at the Confederation Council. "Thank you, Ambassador OK. Your offer is generous and appreciated. However, no reparations or guarantees are necessary." "But Ambassador, they are assembling their entire military. They're declaring this a blood war. Surely you understand the implications." Sarah checked her personal communicator, which showed updates from the human military command. "Ambassador OK, I appreciate your concern, but this situation is under control." The crystalline woman's skin shifted to deep red, indicating disbelief. "Under control. The Empire commands more firepower than any single species in the galaxy. They're bringing everything they have." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "that should make things simpler." Ambassador OK didn't understand the response, but she would soon enough. Across human space, Admiral was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. But unlike the mobilization, which focused on gathering maximum firepower, the human approach was more comprehensive. "Status report," she requested from her Joint Chiefs. Admiral of the Third Fleet spoke first. "All available vessels are moving to intercept the Armada. We'll meet them at the edge of our territory." General of the Colonial Marines added, "Ground forces are prepared for planetary operations if necessary. We have sufficient troops to occupy any territory we might capture." Admiral nodded, then turned to Admiral of the Support Fleet. "What about the industrial ships?" "All construction vessels, mining platforms, and colonization ships are standing by. We're prepared for extended operations far from human space." The plan was ambitious, beyond anything humanity had previously attempted. Rather than simply defending their territory, they were preparing to carry the war directly to the Empire itself. The two fleets met at the system, on the border between human and space. The Armada was a terrifying sight. 800 warships arranged in perfect battle formations, representing centuries of military tradition and technological advancement. The human fleet was larger but seemed less organized. Military vessels were mixed with civilian ships, construction platforms, and even deep space explorers that had been hastily armed for combat. Emperor himself commanded the fleet from his personal dreadnought, the largest ship ever built by his people. As he studied the human formation, he felt confident that sheer numbers and firepower would carry the day. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he commanded. "I will personally offer them one final chance to surrender." The transmission reached Admiral's flagship. She listened to the Emperor's ultimatum without expression. "Human fleet, this is Emperor of the Empire. You have committed acts of aggression against our people that cannot be forgiven. However, I will offer your species one final opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Submit to authority, and your people will be allowed to live as subjects of our empire." Response was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in both fleets could hear it. "Emperor, this is Admiral of the human colonial fleet. Your people attacked human territory and took human civilians prisoner. The appropriate response to such aggression is the complete elimination of your military capability. We regret that you have chosen to escalate this conflict, but we are prepared to accommodate your decision." The Emperor's scales darkened with rage. You dare threaten the Empire? We have conquered civilizations across the galaxy. We are the strongest military force in known space." "You were," Admiral replied. "You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally." Emperor's response was to order his entire fleet to attack simultaneously. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The humans didn't fight to control territory or capture prisoners, or gain negotiating advantages. They fought to completely eliminate the military as a functional entity. Human ships coordinated their attacks with terrifying precision. Every weapon was designed to penetrate defenses. Every tactic was focused on permanent destruction rather than temporary victory. When ships were disabled, human vessels didn't capture them. They destroyed them. Within 8 hours, the Armada was completely annihilated. Emperor died with his ship, refusing to the end to believe that his people could be so thoroughly defeated. But the humans didn't stop there. Admiral transmitted new orders to the fleet. All vessels will advance into space. Our objective is the complete elimination of military capability throughout their empire. What followed was 3 months of systematic destruction that shocked the galaxy. Human fleets moved from system to system throughout space, hunting down every military vessel, every defense platform, every armed station. They weren't conquering territory. They were eliminating the ability of the to ever threaten human space again. Civilian populations were left untouched, but their military infrastructure was completely destroyed. When the humans the Empire simply ceased to exist as a military power. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as emergency diplomatic missions rushed toward human space with offers of peace, friendship, and cooperation. The terrifying lesson was clear. Humans didn't fight wars to improve their negotiating position. They fought wars to permanently solve problems. Emperor Al of the Hegemony, which had been planning its own territorial claims against humanity, instead sent a convoy of ships carrying gifts and tributes. The Trade League offered exclusive trading rights. The Crystalline Collective proposed a mutual defense pact. All of them shared the same understanding. Humanity was too dangerous to fight and too valuable to ignore. The age of casual territorial disputes had ended. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun. 1 year after the war, Ambassador Sarah walked through the corridors of the rebuilt Galactic Confederation headquarters. The architecture hadn't changed, but everything else was different. Where once hundreds of species had engaged in complex territorial disputes and century-long negotiations, now there was an uneasy but absolute peace. She entered the main council chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy waited in respectful silence. Her platform was no longer positioned among the general membership. It now sat in the center of the chamber, alongside the permanent members of the newly formed Security Council. The council chairman, still ancient but now considerably more careful with his words, called the session to order. "Ambassador, thank you for joining us today. The Confederation has several matters requiring human input." Sarah nodded politely. She had never sought this level of influence, but the galaxy had insisted. After witnessing humanity's response to the aggression, every species had reached the same conclusion. It was better to have humans inside the system than outside it. "The first matter," the chairman continued, "concerns a territorial dispute between the Rigel Commonwealth and the Tau Alliance. Both sides claim mineral rights to the Procyon system. In the old system, such a dispute would have taken decades to resolve. The Commonwealth and Alliance would have engaged in proxy conflicts, captured each other's ships, taken prisoners, and gradually escalated until both sides were ready to negotiate from positions of strength. Now, both species turned immediately to the human representative. "Ambassador," said the Commonwealth delegate, "we respectfully request human arbitration of this dispute. We are prepared to accept any decision reached by human authorities." The Alliance representative nodded vigorously. "We agree completely. Human judgment in this matter would be appreciated and accepted without question." Sarah reviewed the file on her personal device. The dispute was relatively straightforward. Both sides had legitimate claims to the system, but neither wanted to risk the kind of conflict that might attract human military attention. Both sides have valid arguments, she said finally. I recommend joint development of the system, with profits split evenly between the Commonwealth and Alliance. Mining rights can be rotated on a 5-year basis. Acceptable, both delegates said simultaneously. The entire negotiation had taken less than 10 minutes. In the old system, it would have required decades and possibly thousands of casualties. The next matter, the chairman announced, concerns a request from the former territories for Confederation membership. This was more complex. After the complete destruction of their military, the people had reformed their government along peaceful lines. They had spent the past year proving their commitment to non-aggression, but many species remained skeptical. They have with all requirements for membership, Sarah observed. They've disbanded their military beyond basic system defense forces. They've established democratic institutions. They've paid reparations to all species previously conquered by their empire. But Ambassador, protested the delegate from Rigel, these are the same people who attacked human space. How can we trust them? Sarah smiled slightly. Because they understand the consequences of aggression better than anyone else in this chamber. The former territories pose no threat to galactic peace. I recommend full membership be granted. There was no debate. When humans recommended something related to peace and security, the galaxy listened. As the session continued, Sarah reflected on how dramatically things had changed. The complex web of territorial disputes, proxy wars, and gradual expansion that had defined galactic politics had been replaced by direct arbitration. Species that once spent centuries maneuvering for minor advantages now brought their disputes directly to human attention, preferring quick resolution to prolonged conflict. The final matter for today, the chairman announced, concerns a request from the Trade League for expanded territory. The delegate stood nervously. Esteemed Ambassador, we have identified 17 uninhabited systems that would be valuable for our trading operations. We request permission to establish colonies in these systems. Sarah checked the star charts. All 17 systems were indeed uninhabited and far from any existing territorial claims. In the old system, they would have simply claimed the systems and dealt with any objections later. Are any other species interested in these systems? She asked. The chamber was silent. Even if other species had been interested, they would never compete with a request that had human arbitration. Colonization approved, Sarah said. The Confederation will update territorial charts accordingly. The delegate's relief was visible. Thank you, Ambassador. The Trade League is grateful for human guidance in this matter. After the session ended, Sarah remained in the chamber as the other delegates filed out. Many stopped to offer thanks for human leadership, requests for future arbitration, or simple expressions of gratitude for the peace that humanity had brought to the galaxy. Ambassador OK of the Federation approached as the chamber emptied. Ambassador, she said, her crystalline skin showing patterns of curiosity, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. When your species first requested membership in the Confederation, did you anticipate this outcome? Did you plan to become the arbiters of galactic peace? Sarah considered the question carefully. Ambassador OK, when we first made contact with galactic civilization, we wanted only to be left alone to develop our colonies in peace. We had no desire to rule others or impose our will on the galaxy. But now you essentially control galactic policy. Every species seeks human approval before taking any significant action. How do you feel about that responsibility? Sarah looked around the empty chamber, thinking about the complex journey that had brought them to this point. We never wanted this power, Ambassador OK. But we've learned that sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to make war too expensive to consider. You mean the lesson? The galaxy learned that humans don't fight limited wars for negotiating advantages. We fight total wars to permanently solve problems. Once that became clear, most species decided that any dispute was better resolved through arbitration than through conflict. Okay's skin shifted to thoughtful blue patterns. So you've achieved peace through the threat of overwhelming force. We've achieved peace by making the alternatives unacceptable, Sarah corrected. The galaxy is safer now than it has been in thousands of years. There are no territorial wars, no gradual expansions, no centuries-long conflicts. Species that have disputes bring them to us for resolution, because they know the alternative is complete destruction of their military capabilities. And you're comfortable with that role. Sarah smiled. Ambassador OK, a year ago the galaxy was filled with constant low-level conflicts, territorial disputes, and aggressive expansions. Millions died in proxy wars and gradual conquests. Today, there is peace. Not because we conquered the galaxy, but because we made conquest too dangerous to attempt. As they walked toward the exit, OK asked one final question. What happens if a species decides they don't want human arbitration, if they choose to fight rather than negotiate? Sarah's response was simple and final. Then they discover why negotiation is preferable. Later that evening, Sarah sent her daily report to Earth. The message was brief. Galactic situation remains stable. Territorial dispute between Commonwealth and Alliance resolved through arbitration. Former territories admitted to full Confederation membership. Expansion request approved. No military incidents reported anywhere in known space. She paused before adding her personal assessment. The galaxy has learned to live in peace not because they love peace, but because they fear the alternative. This may not be the diplomatic solution we originally hoped for, but it is effective. Human space remains secure, and galactic civilization continues to develop without the constant warfare that previously defined relations. The report was received on Earth and forwarded to the colonial government. In conference rooms across human space, military leaders and diplomats discussed the implications of their new role as galactic peacekeepers. They had sought only membership in galactic civilization. Instead, they had become its ultimate authority. The irony was not lost on them. By demonstrating their willingness to fight total wars, they had created a peace more absolute than any achieved through traditional diplomacy. Across the galaxy, species that had once spent centuries in territorial disputes now focused their energies on trade, exploration, and technological development. The threat of human intervention had made cooperation more profitable than conflict. The age of endless galactic warfare was over. The age of enforced peace had begun. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to serve as the ultimate reminder that some prices were too high to pay for conquest. In the end, the galaxy had learned the most important lesson about human nature. They truly didn't negotiate. They annihilated threats so completely that negotiation became the only rational choice for everyone else. Peace through superior firepower had become peace through absolute deterrence, and the galaxy was, paradoxically, safer because of it.